Super soldiers, combatants amplified to the peak of what humans are capable of, typically by some government-sponsored process, the Super Soldier Serum used by Steve Rogers being the most popular among them. Today I'll be ranking the super soldiers of the MCU, comparing their physical abilities, martial arts prowess, and equipment to decide who is the greatest warrior among them. For this video, we'll be keeping in line with the description I laid out beforehand, top-tier fighters whose physical abilities are enhanced by an external source such as the Super Soldier Serum, heart-shaped herb, and so on. Even though someone like Black Widow or Hawkeye are stronger than any normal human and can certainly contend with super soldiers, they will not be included on this list. Regarding the upper limits, we will also be excluding those amplified to near godly levels. Hulk, Sentry, and even Captain Marvel could all be considered super soldiers, but I wanted to keep this list to the more grounded and quote-unquote street tiers of the MCU. My hyper-specific criteria aside, let's get on with the rankings. At number 10 is the leader of Hydra, Red Skull. Johann Schmidt had self-administered a very early version of the Super Soldier Serum that would eventually end up enhancing Steve Rogers and many others. Schmidt's powers allowed him to fight Phase 1 Cap on a near-even playing field. Rogers, while already a perfect human specimen, his fighting skills could be questioned at this point. Cap only spent a small time at boot camp before being whisked away to the stage, then suddenly in the front lines. His martial prowess was likely nothing spectacular, especially for the time, which was the mid-40s. To put it more bluntly, the Russos explained during their commentary of the Winter Soldier that Steve basically had a few weeks of training and his skills were unrefined. This is echoed very clearly in the final fight of the movie, which plays out more like your two drunk uncles duking it out on Thanksgiving. As we will get to in this video, Cap goes on to hone his skills throughout the MCU, so losing to this very early version of him is not a good look. Emil Blonsky, villain of the Incredible Hulk and eventually the Abomination. Before he was a rival to the Hulk, Blonsky was a top-tier Special Forces soldier that became enhanced by General Thunderbolt Ross to combat the Hulk. Realistically, he was probably stronger than Red Skull prior to their enhancements and far more skilled, hailing from the late 2000s and far more military honors than Schmidt, who was more of a scientist than a soldier anyway. Even Black Widow seemed somewhat spooked after seeing Blonsky in action, with Black Widow being hailed as one of the top hand-to-hand fighters in the entire world of the MCU at this point. His initial dosage, however, was considered low, and later upgrades had some dramatic effects, so it's possible he didn't get the same raw power as Cap, or even Johann. But I believe his superior training and skills would likely give him the edge. Isaiah Bradley should come next, however there could be some contentions regarding him and Blonsky. While hailing from an earlier time and should probably be less skilled than Blonsky, Bradley claims to have beaten the Winter Soldier during the Korean War and even ripped off half of his metal arm. In the modern day, the Winter Soldier is a blatant equal and rival to Captain America in his prime. However, this would have been in the early 50s, less than a decade after Bucky's capture and subsequent experiments. Given that Captain America improves over time, it stands to reason that Bucky's training would continue over the many decades and he'd improve as he's sent on many assassination missions. However, even prior to becoming the Winter Soldier, Barnes was a highly skilled and decorated soldier, unlike the less experienced Rogers. Bradley was also able to toss up Sam Wilson, who could contend with the Flag Smashers like Karli Morgenthau. He should at least be above the Red Skull, with Blonsky being more up in the air. That brings us to Karli Morgenthau. While Karli could go below Bradley, she has more concrete showings up against the more modern-day characters. While she is blatantly weaker than them, Karli can put up a fight against Bucky Barnes and John Walker at various points of the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, as well as generally outdoing Sam in his Falcon suit, this same Sam without his suit, which makes him stronger and faster, capable of outmaneuvering Isaiah Bradley. The only thing that's holding Karli back is that Sam is still capable of contending with her, even copping some wins, and can endure her assault when he's not fighting back. Sam in the same episode has an extreme diff fight with Batroc the Leaper, someone that Rogers could beat without his shield during Winter Soldier. This means the 2014 Captain America should generally clap Carly in a stand-up fight. If you think Isaiah scales to peak Winter Soldier that fought Cap in Winter Soldier, he would go above. However, like I already said, I think it's probable that the Winter Soldier got stronger over time, improving his skills and upgrading his technology. In fact, it's probably even likely that after Bradley ripped his metal arm off, he got an upgraded version. So your mileage may vary on the Isaiah Bradley arguments. However, I think it's too questionable to say that he scales to the modern day super soldiers like Carly does. In my opinion, the Red Guardian has the best scaling to the modern Cap and Bucky. Alexei could briefly hold off Taskmaster, an opponent who toyed with Black Widow in her solo movie. Black Widow is a rival or superior to Captain America in skill and is shown sparring with him after Age of Ultron. On top of that, Taskmaster has a photographic memory and uses this to copy the skills of the Avengers during Civil War, meaning she has the skills of Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Black Panther, and so on. While he was ultimately dominated, Alexei blocked several blows from Taskmaster, an outright more skilled opponent than Captain America, possibly even in his prime. This is also 2 years after Winter Soldier, meaning it's after Cap bullied Batroc, and he's been training since then. This all scaling Alexei to a 2016 Civil War Captain America, instead of the 2014 one that bullied Batroc. This is also when Alexei is far past his prime. Even Captain America, when he stopped training for 5 years, give or take, went from the best he's ever been to struggling with himself from 2012. So prime Alexei might actually be pretty cracked. Maybe he really did box with Cap back in the day. That evidently brings us to Bucky Barnes at number 5 and Steve Rogers at number 4. These two have been the benchmark for which the rest of the list has been based on, with basically every character only having feats off of weaker versions of these two. During Winter Soldier and Civil War, these two were more or less evenly matched, with Cap having a slight edge. The reason I say this is it's stated when Bucky goes on his rampage, he and Cap would be equal if Rogers had his shield. Considering he's probably holding back on account of fighting his brainwashed friend, and Bucky is brainwashed and bloodlusted, it does look more favorably upon Cap. It's then stated during Infinity War that Earth's heroes are all at their sharpest and baddest, Steve getting new shield gauntlets and Bucky getting a vibranium arm, stated to make him much stronger than before. They should each simply be far stronger and far more skilled than those listed below. Even if you scaled Isaiah to 2014 Bucky, or thought Carly tackling him one time makes them relative, they'd still at least be slightly weaker than Bucky in his prime, which is probably Infinity War, as after Endgame he focused more on atoning his sins than honing his skills. And Cap should be relative to him at worst, to slightly stronger at best. However, I'm sure what you're really wondering is, who could possibly go higher than the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan? Are there really 3 super soldiers ranked higher than him? I'm sure a lot of people are not going to be happy with this, but John Walker at number 3. John versus Steve could be a talk it in itself. However, generally speaking, I think it's clear that after taking the Super Soldier Serum, Walker eclipsed Rogers. He was already basically a peak human before taking the serum, capable of fighting the Flag Smashers, which were all super soldiers that could press Sam and Bucky, yet afterwards he became an entirely new beast. He fought Sam and Bucky at the same time, and honestly, nearly won. He knocks each of them out of the fight multiple times, and it takes the two of them putting their strength together just to break his arm, and it still wasn't easy. They then hit him as hard as they possibly can, with Sam using his jet thrusters to slam into Bucky, wielding John like a baseball bat, and it doesn't even knock him out. This being the same Winter Soldier who is on par with Captain America with a vibranium arm. A very easy and basic way to compare John and Steve is the way Bucky during Winter Soldier can near effortlessly catch his shield throw. Yet when Bucky with a vibranium arm tries to catch John's shield, he gets launched back. Mind you, this arm is significantly more powerful than the last, and Bucky was not holding back. Many people believe Bucky was simply more powerful when he was the Winter Soldier and became weaker after regaining control of his mind, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Even when in control, Bucky was considered one of the top fighters in the world. He's able to fight Black Panther, Iron Man, and so on. characters that can also contend with him when he's bloodlusted. It's stated that his vibranium arm is an upgrade. It's stated that he's at his best in Infinity War, which is when he's not brainwashed. He also hates John and is more than happy to take the shield back from someone shamelessly ripping off his best friend. The battle is also called an all-out brawl, yet Bucky still gets knocked out. There's just no evidence that him not trying to murder John is heavily nerfing his combat abilities, especially considering he had help on top of that. Rogers is hailed as a top-tier martial artist, however, we've already seen how Walker can take down both Yelena, a match for Black Panther, and Taskmaster, a character who should be even more skilled than Steve. Steve might catch some wins and land more blows, but Walker's sheer power should edge him out. Think Apollo Creed versus Ivan Drago. Norman Osborn, or the Green Goblin. While most don't think of him as a super soldier, the Goblin formula he tested on himself was originally meant for military use, so it does fit the weird, arbitrary rules of this video. Goblin, as seen in No Way Home, could completely dominate MCU Spider-Man, who could physically overpower Bucky Barnes' robotic arm and contend with Captain America. Iron Man did say Cap would have laid him out if he ever wanted, but this is mainly due to experience, as this is his first real superhero fight. He's able to casually catch Bucky's robotic arm with one hand, when Steve struggles and gets pushed back when defending with both. He also laughs off punches from the Shocker, who uses upgraded weapons of the same gauntlets used by Crossbones, which according to the Civil War novel left Cap bruised and staggered. It's very clear that in terms of raw muscle, Spider-Man is superior to Cap and Bucky. He then undergoes multiple movies of growth, honing his spider senses, discovering his true strength, and fighting many more villains and heroes across the way. This Spider-Man then punches Osborn as hard as he can in the face multiple times and doesn't do a thing. Bucky could still physically fight with Walker, hurt him, and block his attacks, while Goblin thrashed someone much stronger than Bucky with total ease. And this was without his helmet, which would naturally bolster his durability. He also has an arsenal of blades, missiles, sleeping gas, and more. With his glider, he can fly and could probably start dropping pumpkin bombs from above. So I don't think Walker or Steve's vibranium shield is just gonna make it a stomp. It's very clear he is above those below and should be number 2. Norman's son Harry, however, would go above him as he simply has better tech and took more of the Goblin formula, Norman not getting the complete dosage. I didn't want to include him as a separate character since he technically doesn't appear in any MCU movie and was added retroactively by Spider-Man 3 becoming canonized. But if you want to include him, just bump everyone else down and he would take the number 2 slot. Number 1 is technically 2 characters, that being T'Challa as the Black Panther and Killmonger. These two are basically evenly matched, with Killmonger winning their first fight and T'Challa the second. So you could put either one above the other, it's just safe to say they're relative. T'Challa was capable of contending with Captain America and Bucky during Civil War, both in and out of his vibranium suit. He's also considered the best warrior in Wakanda, including the Dora Milaje, who can overwhelm pre-serum John Walker. However, this is before he took the heart-shaped herb and became an enhanced individual himself. He should roughly be John Walker tier based on that, but what boosts him to this tier is the Black Panther suit. T'Challa's armor makes him near invulnerable and increases his offensive power dramatically by allowing him to absorb and redirect kinetic energy. This is shown when he can knock down Cull Obsidian, a rival to the Hulk that can throw hands with Mark 50 Iron Man. He also just gets hit by endgame Thanos' sword and gets right back up immediately after. This being, Thanos, and it's clear that no character listed below would really be able to do too much damage to T'Challa or Killmonger. The Black Panther suit is also equipped with vibranium claws that can scratch Cap's own indestructible shield. In a straight fistfight, Goblin is probably stronger. He is simply multiple tiers higher than the likes of Civil War Cap, where Black Panther is more in that range. However, with their tech, Black Panther would be able to tank his assaults with minimal damage, absorb his own energy and use it against him, and use his claws to rip through his armor. Goblin could theoretically just fly above the ground and never let T'Challa tag him, but that's very out of character for him as he does have a massive ego and would probably want to take T'Challa T'Challa down face to face. He'd probably try ramming him with his glider, which wouldn't do too much more than bounce off his vibranium armor. If this list was based without tech, and more so the character's pure hand-to-hand prowess, T'Challa and Killmonger would probably go around John Walker tier, like I already said, and Goblin would be number 1. However, when considering their arsenals and technological advantages, the Black Panther reigns supreme.